The Jesse Blake Sports Report with Jesse Blake.
Welcome to the Jesse Blake Sports Report. Whether this is your first time here, your last time here, or somewhere in between, I appreciate that you're here today to experience something a little bit different. I'm calling this the news dump. It's the first edition. We'll see how it goes. We'll see how we like this news dump I'm going to do every now and again. I don't know if it's going to be once a week, twice a week. Maybe this is just the new way we do things. I don't think so, because I like doing the short form videos where I just do one topic for like 10 minutes and I just do that news. But today there was just a whole bunch of things. It's been like a couple days since I made a video. Actually, I made a video yesterday for the Elias Pettersson news, his new contract, but I made that on the SDPN channel. I ended up on the Jesse Blake Sports Report audio, so this channel was kind of bare for like 2 days, which scares me. I don't like going 2 days without making a video. So there's like a whole bunch of different news topics that like I'm always taking notes. Like I got a little in the notes app on the iPhone, or just favoriting things on Twitter, or taking screenshots of different things I see around the web, or news articles that I'm constantly reading. Shout out The Athletic for always producing some of the best journalism in sports. I think they're number one on the sports journalism tier. Maybe we'll do a tier list of sports journalism websites that I read. Anyways, welcome to this thing I'm calling the news dump, where I just got a bunch of sports topics of things that have happened in the last couple days since I last recorded, of topics I want to talk about. Just quick things I want to hit on. I don't think any of these things I'm going to spend a whole too long. We'll see how it goes, but I want to try this out. I've been wasting a lot of time rambling off the top, getting into it. We're calling this the news dump. I'm going to talk about a whole bunch of different things. We're just going to ramble, see how it goes. Let me know if you like it. Let me know if you enjoy this kind of setup. Also, if you're watching on video, yes, I'm in a new location. I'm sitting on a couch instead of my usual chair. If you're listening, nothing has changed except for the content. So first things first, I just got done watching the Netflix Cup. So Netflix did this thing. It's not called Netflix Cup, it's called Netflix Slam. Netflix did this thing on Sunday, when I'm recording, Sunday, March 3rd, called the Netflix Slam. It's Carlos Alcaraz and Rafael Nadal. They competed in a one-on-one exhibition tennis match. If you're not familiar, those are two very famous tennis players. And they went head-to-head live on Netflix. They were in Las Vegas at the Mandalay Bay. Big thing. I looked at it as Netflix's foray into live sports. They've done this a couple times. They did the Netflix Cup that I was referring to, which was a golf event where they had two F1 drivers compete with two pro golfers, and they all did a fun exhibition match thing. This time, they got two of the top tennis players in the world, one of the greatest tennis players of all time, and his rival, who's an upstart 20-year-old who is from the same country as him, and Carlos Alcaraz, who's going to be the next Rafael Nadal. And they had this match. Full spoiler, if you want to watch it, you have 5 seconds to turn this off or skip forward. If you don't want full spoilers, the timestamps are there. If you don't want to hear what's coming up in the match, I'm about to spoil it in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Carlos Alcaraz won. They played a 2-set match that went to a tie break because they each split the first 2 sets. So first things first, the rules were weird. They played 2 sets and they tied the first 2 sets, and then they just played in the first to 11 tie break, win by 2. And eventually Alcaraz won that, which I wasn't a fan of. If you're going to play this match, play it by normal tennis rules, best 2 out of 3 sets, and then from there you go ahead. It's weird that they did that. Didn't like that. It felt like a pilot episode. It felt like Netflix trying out in front of everybody, hey, we can do live sports. We did it last time with the golf F1 thing. Now we're going to do a tennis thing. We're just proving to people that we can do it. It didn't feel real. It felt like we were watching a demo. Me and whoever else was watching. I didn't watch the full thing. It was like 2.5 hours too, which is a little long, but it's a full sporting event, so that's it. They had half an hour off the top of a pregame, and then it dragged on a little. But yeah, it was definitely good in terms of production value. The tennis wasn't. You felt that it wasn't a Grand Slam. You felt that nothing was on the line. You understood that the Carlos and Rafa were trying like every shot where they had a chance to do something, hey, a little more difficult. We're not going to play it safe here because there's nothing on the line. I'm just going to go for it each time in terms of their shot making. So watching preseason anything isn't too entertaining. And from the get-go, this is the preseason. This is an exhibition. Nothing counts here. So if Netflix wants to do, they're going to keep doing these things because it looks like they're going to be a contender for live sports rights in the near future with one of these major leagues. And I'm like, okay, they can do it, but I'd like to see it when it's real. That's kind of just my first standout. I was like, I wasn't too into it watching it because it wasn't real. I'm watching preseason and it's not even like preseason where I'm like, okay, I'm watching these Leafs players to see like who's going to make the team or anything like that. It was just preseason for the sake of preseason. So, Netflix, if you're going to do these things, I need something that counts. Maybe you just delay it till you get some real sports where there's actual like wins and losses on the line. That would be cool. Their production, they can clearly do it. They can clearly get a live sporting event done. I worried about just like if there's a mass of people trying to watch it. That's everything everybody talks about, the Amazon Thursday night games where they're on Amazon. If it's a lot of people on the servers, how is that going to work out? Netflix, like they obviously have never had that many people. Like I don't think a whole bunch of people tuned into this live, but we'll see. The features that are available on the live video on Netflix aren't the same that are available on just a regular show you're watching. If you're watching like anything on Netflix, when you're trying to skip through, it's a lot more difficult on the watching the replay video. So they need to fix all that stuff. But like 6 out of 10, I guess I'll give it. The Netflix slam is like, if you don't want to watch it, I wouldn't recommend it. If you caught it, you're like not disappointed, but you're like, could have watched something else. That's my review of the Netflix slam. Their score bug, fix their score bug. I don't like the red and the sharp edges. All right. Next thing on the docket. Next thing in the news dump that I have in my notes, Alek Manoah. Oh, so we talked about Alek Manoah last week. What was it? Last week, Wednesday, when I made that video about Manoah and his first start and how concerned I was. And I think everything I said there still holds true. I don't trust Alek Manoah at all. And now I'm going to read directly from Keegan Matheson's article in MLB.com. Alek Manoah is dealing with soreness in his throwing shoulder and didn't really bounce back the way he wanted to. After his first Grapefruit League start on Tuesday, the right-hander tried to throw a bullpen session Friday, but stopped midway through. He was throwing and said it feels a bit cranky, so he wanted to be extra careful at this point. That was skipper John Schneider. He said he was throwing and said it feels a bit cranky, so we want to be extra careful at this point. That's what John Schneider said. Now the Blue Jays will back Manoah off from throwing for a couple of days and reevaluate how he's feeling. An MRI showed no structural damage in Manoah's shoulder, which is the good news, but any mention of the shoulder that goes beyond your standard soreness is cause for some level of concern. That's once again Keegan Matheson on MLB.com writing about Alek Manoah. And how, like, when are we all? I'm not gonna do the thing where Alek Manoah, he can't be your starter. Like, I can't fully commit to that, but I'm about 80% there. I'm 80% Bowden Francis, Mitch White, get them ready at this point right now to be the fifth starter in the rotation, because he started once, Manoah. It was terrible. Couldn't throw strikes. Tries to go out there, throw a bullpen session, soreness, can't make his next start. Today, I anticipated this afternoon, the Blue Jays played the Red Sox. Manoah was supposed to start. I anticipated watching Manoah today and coming on this channel and making a video about it because I wanted to see how it goes, because I assumed it was going to go poorly and there would be entertainment there. But on Friday, we got this news, and it's like the Blue Jays can't plan around this player at this point. It's got to be a hopeful happiness if it works out. It's got to be like, oh, that's a surprise. You know, that's how it's got to be if Manoah ends up becoming the fifth starter. I think they're doing this team a disservice if they're planning for him to be the starter. And like, if I'm giving them a lot of leeway here, because I have not been a fan of what's gone on this offseason with the Blue Jays, where they've gone out and bought no one. they had a willingness to sign Shohei Ohtani for $1 billion. And instead of doing that, they took that money, they put it back into their pocket instead of spending it, and they decided to spend it on no one. We saw Matt Chapman sign in San Francisco when he could have easily come back, even though he had a poor season with the Blue Jays last season. After a good April, he had a bad rest of the way, but it's not like he couldn't help the lineup. And them having an unwillingness to spend money on just like, hey, here's something that could fill it out. We put an option on his contract like he has with the Giants where he signed. You put a couple options on Matt Chapman's deal, and you say, if we signed a bad deal this offseason, we can get rid of it if we want by opting out of it this coming offseason. So they chose not to do that. This Manoah situation now to start the spring is all bad news. And I'm just like, okay, we're going to have another 3 weeks of spring training. I'm going to sit here and we're going to just see how it goes. And that's the waiting game with the Blue Jays that I'm playing right now. It's to see how it goes. I'm down on them to start the year because our expectations are so high. And I'm like, how are we ever going to meet these expectations? Because the hitting needs to turn around. They did nothing with the hitting. All last season, the hitting was the problem. They couldn't get hits to support one of the greatest rotations they've ever had. And what are we expecting out of the rotation again? The rotation to be one of the greatest rotations ever? Or do we naturally expect the rotation to take a little bit of a step back because they all played amazing last year? Or even if they hold pat, then we're just relying on the hitting again. So right now, it's a wait and see game. Does the hitting... will the hitting be there this season? That's what I'm waiting and seeing. And the Manoah news, every time I see it, I'm like, ugh, it's an eye roll. It's okay, all right, here we go again. Like, when's he gonna pitch? So that's how I'm feeling about Alek Manoah. Next thing, Max Verstappen won the Bahrain GP this Sunday, or Saturday is when they raced it. Max Verstappen wins again in F1. I don't like. Are we all collectively bored? Even if you're a Max Verstappen fan, the argument is greatness is cool. Greatness is exciting. Greatness is the whole reason we watch sports. 90s Bulls, 2010s Warriors, Islanders of the 80s in the NHL, like Yankees of the early 2000s. Like, dynasties are amazing. Dynasties are what we remember in pro sports. And Max Verstappen right now is doing everything that you could ask out of greatness. He's the greatest right now. He's having the greatest run, and we've seen in Formula One in like a year, because before him, Lewis Hamilton won 7 championships in a row. Should have been 8, but we're seeing right now complete and utter dominance is the point. And F1 fans are tuning out because what's the point of tuning into these races if you know Max Verstappen is going to win by a couple of seconds? And it's different in F1 as opposed to all those other team sports. And that's my problem with his greatness in F1, because all those teams I mentioned, like the Warriors and the Bulls and the Yankees and whatever great team you want to throw out there, at least they had a regular season where it was like, who's going to win? Who's going to win? They actually have to play all these games, and you got to see if the challenger can challenge them. With Max, they don't play individual games. They have these races, but the whole thing is the race each time where he's ahead. So there's really no challenge each time these weekends roll up. Do you know what I mean? I'm going to watch this race and he's going to win. When you turn, I wasn't there for the Bulls, but when a season began, you think like, okay, the Bulls are going to win, but you think the Bulls are the favorite to win. Okay, let's say that. And then there's going to be challengers. They got to play a whole season. They got to play 4 rounds of the playoffs. They got to get there. There's going to be a challenge there. There's going to be events where it's like, oh, this could be it. With Max, there's none of that. There's none of the intrigue of a competition. Like, it's not a competition at this point. It's his car is faster and he's going to win, and it's just watching the inevitable. At least with a team sport, the greatness you have to watch show up. With Max, it's not even like we have to watch it do its thing. We know it's going to happen. There isn't 100% certainty when the Warriors are up against the Cleveland Cavaliers and the Warriors are trying to win another title. And I'm not talking about like LeBron knocking them off the 3-1 blown lead, but like the 2 years with Durant where they went back to back, they show up and they still have to compete. They still have to do the thing and they have to win all the playoff rounds. With Max, he has to go out and win every race, but the races themselves, he's already so far ahead that he's won. Anyway, all I'm trying to say is it's getting boring. And I feel like a lot of casual F1 fans that myself, I'm a casual fan. I will put myself in the casual basket of F1 fans. And I don't know if I'm making a compelling point here, but all I know is tuning in every week to watch this race where Max sits on pole. In qualifying, he's 2 seconds ahead of everybody in qualifying. He sits at the front of the track, or Leclerc sits at the front of the track, and by the end of lap 2, I shouldn't even say he sits on pole. It sits one qualifying. The other cars can out qualify him. It's the race pace that's annoying. Leclerc sits on pole every week. Alonso can sit on pole. Lewis can sit on pole. Anybody can sit on pole. When we get to the race, the Red Bull car is too good in the actual races for anything to matter, and it's a little boring to watch. I think that's my entire point with that. That's all I had in my notes. F1 was boring this weekend. And it's boring every weekend at this point because Max just keeps winning. I'd like to see some competition in F1. But greatness is cool to witness. But this greatness is more boring than other greatness. That was my whole point in that note. Next news dump. Nazem Kadri's OT winner. This is a quick one. I feel like it would be bigger if McDavid did it. I think that's it. I think Naz is getting not the attention that his unbelievable OT winner against the Pens on Saturday night. If you missed it, great highlight. Go check it out. I feel like it would be a lot better received if it was Connor McDavid. And because it happened on the Calgary Flames and Nazem Kadri, it's not getting the love it deserves. It's one of the best goals of the season. And Kadri did it, which is really freaking cool. NFL. There's a note this weekend about the NFL. Florio had it. Let me see where it's published, just so I can give the proper. Mike Florio. Was it Pro Football Talk? NFL 18-game season. So the NFL is in talks to add another game to the regular season. Yeah, it was Mike Florio on Pro Football Talk. Credit where credit is due. So in 2030, the NFL CBA is up. And that at that point, it's like, I'm telling you right now, in 2030, we're going to have 18 NFL games, and it's going to be friggin' awesome because that means the Super Bowl gets pushed 1 week. The Super Bowl being pushed 1 week means it lands the day before a holiday. In 2030, the Super Bowl will be on Sunday before President's Day in the States and Family Day across Canada. The Super Bowl is going to go to a next level. If that is even possible, what we're about to witness with an 18-game NFL schedule, and the CBA is up in the NFL in 2030 is what I was saying. In the new CBA, they're going to negotiate the extra game. That means the preseason is going to come down from 3 games to 2 games. Only 2 games of the preseason. 18-game schedule. There's going to be probably 2 bye weeks, and they'll time the Super Bowl out so it finishes the Sunday. It'll be played on the Sunday before a holiday in the States, which makes the Super Bowl jump to another even level because now the Super Bowl is a holiday. Like, how awesome is that? Like, that just, it makes so much sense, and it's a shame it's taken so long to get here, but I don't know. I think that's one of the coolest things at the end. The NFL is the king of sports right now in North America, and there's a reason for it. It's because of the way the game is played each week, and that it's an event. They're diluting the product right now, I think, by having too many games on too many weeks. When NFL was strictly a Sunday, Monday product, and then they added Thursday Night Football, and now they got a whole bunch of Saturday weekend games, and then now they add Friday games, which is crazy. The whole point of the NFL is it's event viewing each week. And it's so special in that way that no other sport operates like that, because you get the F1, like I think a lot of the North American takeover of F1, the way it's had this crazy thing from Drive to Survive, is because it in some ways replicates that, in that it's a weekend event. It's the one thing that happens each week, and you go watch it. And the NFL, like I'm saying, it's the Sunday event. You watch all day. Those are the games. You move on with your week. You talk about it. And then there's a whole news cycle around that. But where was I going with this? The NFL is the king of TV products in that way, and they are so smart in that they're going to protect that ground with everything they got. And if taking another step in creating a bigger storm around their marquee event is making it a national holiday, is if that's the next step, they're going to do it. And that is so genius, to make your game a national holiday. Like, kudos to them for being the greatest marketers in sports right now. And every season you see that the television ratings, the top 100 television shows, 90% of them are NFL games. It's there's a lot of things to be taken with the way they run their league from a strictly marketing standpoint. They're fantastic at it, and they do a good job. All the other stuff, like head injuries, and the way they care about people who break the law and play in their league and all that fun stuff, not great. The way you can cut salaries. We don't have to go into all the bad stuff, but let's just mention some of the bad stuff while we give them praise for being the best marketers in the world. Next thing up on my list of things to chat about. Oh, let's go to Agent Provocateur. Agent Provocateur is a podcast on SDPN, the podcast network that I co-own. I'm going to drop a link in the description where this timestamp is. Go watch Agent Provocateur. It might be I think it's the most underrated hockey podcast in the business right now. This week, they had Helene Elliott of the LA Times, who was one of the greatest sports writers of all time, like easily. They had her for over an hour just telling stories from the sports world, from her career in sports. It's such a great listen. Go listen to it. And then they also dropped 2 days later an episode with Bill Guerin, who's the general manager of the Minnesota Wild. And that episode drops days before the trade deadline. Like, Alan Walsh, who is the host of that show, along with Adam Wilde, his Rolodex is the most incredible thing in the world. He's able to get anybody on the phone and on this podcast, not just for personal conversations for his life, but just in terms of, I can get this person on my podcast. It's an incredible thing, and I think it's just the conversations that happen on that. If you're a hockey fan, just check it out. It's so darn good. They had a tax expert on to talk about taxes and how NHL players and pro sports athletes, if you're a fan of any pro sport, how they do their taxes. Like, that conversation isn't happening anywhere else in the podcast space. Like, it's a one of one, and I want Agent Provocateur to get the credit it deserves for what a unicorn it truly is as a podcast. Go listen to it. Go check out an episode. I swear you're going to love it. Next thing on my list that I want to touch on, basketball. It's going to be Denver and Boston. like I'm talking about Max Verstappen winning everything, but there's a chance it won't be, because the NBA is still fun and F1's getting boring. So Boston this week blew out the Golden State Warriors. They've been so impressive this season, and like, anything can happen in the playoffs, and you got to worry about a team like Miami, who's going to come out of nowhere at all points. I don't think the 76ers are ever going to do anything. I don't think Joel Embiid is a playoff performer. Like, who in the East is going to challenge them? But once we get the West is a little different, because, like, I don't know if the T-Wolves are going to show up in the playoffs, or the Clippers are going to do things that the Clippers can never do. But let me just pull up the NBA standings here and just check how clear. 8.5 games. You can't count Giannis out either. Like, there's competition going on here in the NBA. I don't need to sell it to you that it's going to be an eventful playoffs, but Boston is 8.5 games clear of the Milwaukee Bucks for the number one seed in the Eastern Conference. They are so good this year. They've won 11 games in a row, and I didn't expect Boston to be at this level. Like, Tatum and Brown are going to be good, but you don't think I don't hold them in that regard because they haven't won anything. But if you look at all the times they've been close to the finals or in the finals, they are this team. And it's okay. We're waiting for them to put it together. And Jayson Tatum is 26 years old still. 26 years old. Actually, his birthday's today. Happy birthday, Jayson Tatum. This is your birthday present. Boston's probably going to be in the finals in the East. Denver's probably going to be in the finals in the West. And that matchup is going to be one hell of a series. I think like we got a 7-gamer, and like it can be an all-timer is what I'm thinking. I don't think anybody knocks off Jokic. Like as good as OKC is and how good I want Shea to be, like they're gonna probably win the 1 seed because they're young and healthy, and Shea's gonna go gunning for it because he's such a competitor. But when it comes playoff time, I don't see anybody knocking off Jokic. Boston, shout out them for the note was just shout out Boston for being so darn good this regular season and taking their game to another level and not taking their foot off the gas pedal. This is a tweet from Hoop Venue on Twitter. Every team in NBA history to have the number 1 offense while being a top 3 defense. The 71 Bucks, the 72 Lakers, the 74 Bucks, the 96 Bulls, I forgot the 67 76ers, the 17 Warriors, and the 2024 Boston Celtics. So let me just read that to you again. Every team in NBA history to have the number 1 offense while being a top 3 defense. This year's Boston Celtics, the 2017 Warriors, the 1996 Chicago Bulls, and then a couple teams from the 70s and 60s. I don't know. That's a fantastic company to be in. Like the numbers back up the results and the eye test with the Boston Celtics. They took another step this year. Jayson Tatum, when does he enter the upper echelon of the superstars in the NBA? Because he's definitely not there yet. I think it's like a lot of people are complaining about ring culture because you got to be in that pantheon. You got to win a ring to get into that group. Like we don't think about Jayson Tatum the way we think about Kevin Durant, the way we think about LeBron. Obviously, we don't. Giannis, even Kawhi. Like these are all guys with pedigree, with decades in the league, with rings. So Jayson Tatum needs, even Jokic. Like Jayson Tatum's not in that league yet. Jayson Tatum needs a ring to get in that group. Let's see if this year's the year. There's never been a better opportunity right now. You just got to go through Jokic. You got to be one team and then not also choke in the East when you're going through that playoff side. Caitin Clark, other basketball note. Caitin Clark passed Pete Maravich for the all-time NCAA Division I basketball leading scorer. She is now the leading scorer ever. Nobody has scored more points in Division I basketball than Caitin Clark. And if you're not up on Caitin Clark, I don't know, where have you been, first of all? 2, she's going to change the WNBA forever. She announced, what was it, early last week, that she's not returning to Iowa. She's going to the WNBA next year. Indiana has the number 1 pick. They're going to pick her first overall because they have to. Like, there's some other great players coming out of the women's game this year in NCAA too. But if you're Indiana, you got to select Caitin Clark. And I wonder if this is the moment. Like, that's my whole thing with Caitin Clark is, 1, it's amazing to watch her. 2, is this the moment? Is she the star? Because stars sell games. Like I've been through that a million times on the Steve Dangle podcast and here too. Stars are how people fall in love with the game. People are so into women's basketball right now. Let me take a sip of water. People are so into women's college basketball right now. And it's because of Caitin Clark and a couple other stars like Angel Reese and the LSU team. But she's really been the driving force of this whole thing because of her ability to shoot like Steph Curry on a next level. Like, so she's been this linchpin for the women's college basketball game. Does it translate to the WNBA? Are we about to see, as Caitin Clark enters the WNBA, the next level that league can go to? And are we going to see this league, like the revenues it generates triple? Are we going to see expansion because of her? Are we going to see another revolution of women, or a revolution of women's basketball? There have been a couple, I should say. Like, I don't want to discredit what some of the women of the past have done. Like the 90s, there's huge moments for the WNBA, but are we going to see the next thing? Is Caitin Clark going to revolutionize the way we look at women's basketball and women's pro sports? Like, is it going to be taken to this next level? I keep asking the same question over and over again because I don't have an answer. It's just a speculation on how the next years are going to play out, and it's going to be fun to watch. And right now, going into the NCAA tournament, it's going into March Madness coming up in a couple weeks. We're gonna do some March Madness stuff on this channel for sure, on this podcast feed for sure. The way I look at it, and I feel like having this take, people will they think you're diminishing Caitin Clark's accomplishments, but I think it's fair to say this. I think to cap off her fantastic tenure at at Iowa, she should get a ring. She should, like, they don't need to win. Like, winning a championship, she doesn't need it to be one of the greatest women college basketball players ever. She doesn't need it, but it would be nice. I think that is the cherry on top. I think that is how you cement it. I think that's the point there. The way she can cement her title as greatest women's basketball player ever, women's college basketball player ever, I got to specify that, is by winning the title. There's pressure here to win the title. I don't think we should just decide. There's a lot of the conversations like, oh, she doesn't need to win, blah, blah, blah. That's a team thing, and individually she's great. Yes, that can be true, but as a team and as an individual on the team, there's got to be some pressure here to win, and I think Iowa needs to win to cement her legacy, and that is going to be legacy defining if she ends up not winning a title, not winning a championship there. They were awfully close to LSU, to beating LSU last year, and then Angel Reese and LSU came out of nowhere. And they didn't come out of nowhere. They defeated them. You know, they got the upper hand in the championship game, and I think she needs a title. She doesn't need the title, but it'd be good. It'd be good on the resume. She needs the title to cement herself as best ever, is all I want to say. And I feel there's been some people who've come out with that opinion as well, and I think I'm on their side that a title would be nice, and it doesn't diminish her accomplishments, but the whole thing is you got to win. Like, you can be great individually, but you got to win, and I think she's got to win this season. It's her last shot at it. That's Caitin Clark. We're going to be following Caitin Clark for a long time here. Last thing, I think that's it. Last thing, Wilt Chamberlain, the anniversary of his 100-point game. Oh, I want to do Boosh as well. Second last thing, Wilt Chamberlain scored 100 points in what year was it? The anniversary was yesterday on March 2nd. Let me find out what year exactly. 100-point game. It happened on March 2nd, 1962. Wilt Chamberlain scored 100 points. There's been a conspiracy theory that's come up in the last, 5 years. It's been a new internet thing. There's been some great articles written about it in the last couple of days about the 100-point game and the conspiracy theories that have floated around it. But he did it. Like, it's not, it's factual. There's a great book written on it about the 100-point game where you could learn about, the writer speaks to people who were there to witness it. And a lot of people think it didn't happen because there's no footage of it, but the NBA wasn't on TV a lot of time. It happened. It didn't happen at the regular NBA arena. It happened outside of where they usually play. It happened in Hershey, Pennsylvania, in a game between the Philadelphia Warriors and New York Knicks, and it happened in Hershey, Pennsylvania. Neither team's home court, but the NBA played games in random cities' home courts. And the thing about the 100-point game is, yes, everybody fed him the basketball to get 100 points. It was a effort by the team once he started scoring a bunch, like once he was at like 70 and 80, yes, they did stop trying to win and just try to get him 100 points. But the other team also only guarded Wilt Chamberlain. Like they only guarded him to try and stop him from scoring 100 points. So the game stopped being a basketball game and it started being a let's try and get Wilt 100 points and let's stop Wilt from scoring 100 points. And that's what both teams were doing. Neither team was trying to win the game at some point during the game. This is all a retelling of the articles I read over the weekend about the 100-point game. And so I just wanted to talk about the conspiracy theory, how it's funny that people will come up with this thing that it didn't really happen. But yes, it did happen. But I think it's fair if people want to say there's a bit of an... Actually, I don't think it's fair to say there's a bit of an asterisk on the game because we see guys get fed all the time. Like, I feel like that Kobe game where Kobe scored 81 against the Raptors, which is the second most points ever scored in an NBA game, everybody was feeding Kobe. Like, they almost lost that game, if you remember, to the Raptors, and they were feeding Kobe to keep going. And Karl Anthony Towns got benched the other day in a game where he put up, 70 points? Because he kept shooting, and there were bad shots. So I feel like this happens, and we can't discredit Wilt Chamberlain's 100-point game just because they were trying to get him 100 points. That's it. Last thing, Matt Rempe on Ilya Lyubushkin. It's not a great hit. Do I think it deserved discipline? Yes. Is there any precedence that the NHL is going to discipline Matt Rempe? No. So I can't keep getting upset at the inconsistencies of the NHL because that's what they are. They're inconsistent, and we never know what the rules are anymore. And it's a shame. Like, Ilya Lyubushkin comes back game one for the Leafs out with an injury, and it's a hit that Matt Rempe probably doesn't. He's not the best at throwing because he's so new to the league and he's so big, and in different levels of hockey, he's probably been doing that forever and it's been okay. But now that it's televised and he's playing against Toronto, he's on the Rangers, it's a whole different level of scrutiny for that hit. So I feel like over time, Matt Rempe is going to learn to use his 6'8" frame a little better, but it's not a great hit. And I think they're deserved at least something in the moment, like charging, like a hit to the head, 5-minute misconduct, anything. And the fact that it didn't get anything in the moment, I think it deserved a fine, but neither of those things happened. And what are we going to do again? We're going to say the NHL has no consistencies in the way they're calling anything. And that's true. So am I going to get worked up every single time? A little bit. And then that's where we got to land with that stuff. Okay. I think that's it. It's very frustrating to watch NHL hockey and see that the referees have no idea what they're doing game in and game out, and that they just decide willy-nilly one night something's a penalty and something's not a penalty, and then the Department of Player Safety, they decide one night something's a fine or a suspension, and then the next night it's not. It's very annoying, and you can only be annoyed so much. But I guess I just got to keep being annoyed, because the only way this is going to change, I think, is if we keep complaining, I guess. But I don't know if that's going to help anything. I'm going to keep complaining. I think I didn't want to complain, but now that I'm complaining, I'm like, I should complain because it's not right. So I'm going to keep complaining. That's it. I think that's it. A little longer than I thought we'd go. Good. Let me know if you enjoyed this. Let me know if you like this news dump. Maybe I'll do it every Sunday, maybe every Monday, maybe every Friday. I don't know. We'll figure it out. Thank you for being here. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you chose to be here, listening or watching this podcast right now. Happy new baby to Steve Dangle. Steve Dangle and his wife, Mrs. Dangle, had a baby on Sunday morning. I think technically their little girl is born on Sunday. Yeah, because because he was texting us on Saturday and that was after midnight. So Sunday morning, their second child, which is not going to affect Steve Dangle podcast. You're still going to get Steve Dangle podcast 3 times a week, but we have some special guests coming up Monday. Chris Johnston will be filling in for Steve Dangle. I believe it will be the first ever Steve Dangle podcast without Steve Dangle in the history of a Steve Dangle podcast, which will be fun. Yeah, look out for that. And congratulations, Steve and his wife, SL. Happy new baby. go wish them congratulations on one of his social media pages. It's a pretty little baby. It's very cute. That is it. That's it for me today. Thank you for being here. Good night from Toronto.
And that is how it's done.
The Jesse Blake Sports Report with Jesse Blake.
Jesse Blake, the guy that likes to hear his name twice in one sentence. Sure, I know him. No, he doesn't have an ego at all.